Hey everyone, Phreak here. It's time for the last patch of 2019. I have been loving preseason so far, and this patch is also pretty sick. So, 924 has some cool. I guess the term is going to be remaster. I'll keep using that. We got some sick remasters coming in for Diana and Yuumi, and generally some pretty cool changes. I like the patch on paper. Let's see what's into it. So, up first, Aphelios exists. I think all the Reddit memes around this champ requires 300 IQ to play is pretty fraudulent. I think the baseline is reasonably high on Aphelios. What's going to be interesting is I think it's going to be hard to appreciate Aphelios's like the player's skill when watching something like LCS because all he can really ever do is auto attack, press Q, and press R. The difficulty in playing the champion to the highest degree is which of the two guns do you use? Which gun are you going to run out of ammo? How are you going to sequence your guns? And that's hard to appreciate as a spectator. So I think this champion has a really high skill cap, but I think it's going to be very hard to appreciate and honestly, in some ways, hard to learn how to get the most out of it. But he'll be fun. He looks cool about it. Akali, instead of doing 4/3 does 5/4 the damage to minions, so some wave cleared down. I think that's a pretty big deal for late game Akali and mid game Akali, especially in pro. Should be pretty meaningful for a pro nerf. Will mean some in solo queue, but shouldn't be as hard there. So good to see them trying to take some shape towards Akali. Good stuff there. Next up, Amumu getting 2 seconds off the rank 1 cooldown with no difference later on. Here's the numbers. People typically maxed Q second. You have less reason to now. You probably still will. W's rank up is pretty crap, but ultimately, even if you're going to keep the same skill order, you have better cooldowns in the early through mid game. So Amumu buff looks pretty solid. Next up, a big sort of, this isn't really, I would say, a remaster. It's just some updates to Braum. So higher health growth, higher base health regen, better W cooldown, better W cost, and then the resist to the ally, the flat is the same. The bonus resists is going to be flattened, but at a rank 2.5. And the resist to self, the flat is the same, but the bonus resists is heightened. So here is some of the math, right? So here's Braum's base HP before and after. Pretty meaningfully higher. This is pretty useful. And as far as the regen, also pretty useful. So okay, solid. That's some pretty good base durability increases. There's the W cost and cooldown, also pretty sizably better. Okay, great. That sounds nice. This by itself would probably raise 1% or so. And then the percent resists given to allies. Keep in mind, Braum support maxes W last, especially more so now. And as a support, you are not going to be getting to level 15 before anytime soon. So this nerf doesn't really happen basically ever. Meanwhile, your self resists are quite nice. Now, I don't have a complete grasp on tank support itemization thresholds right now because almost every game I'm playing has like Senna or some mage support or Ashe or whatever because people are trying the new stuff, and I'm playing normals, so people aren't trying very hard to win. They're just playing whatever they want. So I haven't seen a lot of tank supports. But in general, the support optimization update does give you more room to buy armor and MR. But again, keep in mind you're not going to see that much overall, right? You're going to see at most, I feel like, by the end of the game, plus 100 armor, plus 100 MR. So this is worth 2 armor and magic resist to your ally, right? Like, this means basically nothing. They just chose a flat number that looked like a buff. This could have not happened and it wouldn't have mattered. Like, you could actually remove this from the patch notes. And so it was like, wait, what about, it's like, who cares? This means basically nothing, right? Because it's bonus armor MR. It's not his base stat, so it means very little. Now, it might double dip into the base W itself. I'm not certain on that one, but also who cares? The numbers are so small, it doesn't matter. On this side, you're actually getting like a pretty decent premium. For most of the game, you're getting another 26% on top of what you bought. So when you have 100 armor, you get 26 more armor on top when your W is active. That's pretty solid. Keep in mind the cooldown's a bit shorter as well by 2 seconds. So this part actually matters. Braum himself definitely going to be a bit tankier. Also, I think these are numbers where they're in the territory of, oh, my W gives defensive stats that I care about. Like, the numbers have to be this high before you actually start to care. Because otherwise it's like 10 plus 10% bonus armor. Like, no. No one cares. Totally no one cares. Now, what I will say, the one thing I honestly would have been okay seeing here is instead of these numbers, it would have been... because the math would have worked out this way, just give, I think it's 12 plus 12% of total. Basically, the reason for that is it lines up the math so that it's equally good for tankies and squishies. Doesn't have to matter, but like, could have done. Regardless, this is pretty solid. Seems pretty good. And also there's one final change, which is rank 2 and rank 3 R do more damage. Again, level 11 Braum is very late in the game. Level 16 doesn't happen. But the knockups overall, basically knockup duration scales with distance. If you get the long range R, it's a bigger knockup instead of just the first target hit gets the big knockup, regardless of how far away they are. So essentially, your like melee range flash R is not nearly as good. But if you do get a super sick snipe, it's a very long stun. So it's going to be reshaped here. In general, it's a nerf to how he's currently used, which is, to be fair, the intent. It's a nerf to how he's currently used, and we'll see how it goes. Alrighty. So Diana gets a remaster. Let's talk about it. Okay, mana is up, attack damage is up. Cool. Here's her mana. Here's her AD. Would have liked to see even more mana growth. I still want to champion the idea of every champion reaches 1,000 base mana at level 18. Exactly 1,000. And you can change base mana by some amount and mana per level by some amount. If you need to tune the level 1 values, that's fine. But 420 to 845, we're getting there. We're getting there. I wanted to see 1,000. I think that's good. My opinion. AD slightly higher. Okay, cool. That's fine. Decent stuff. Alrighty. Keep in mind, of course, that the passive has changed. It now has flat attack speed on it again. It's back. Do want to point out, you can literally do this by just changing her base stats, right? Like, this is a thing that exists just simply in champion base stats, right? Just champions have this already. Like, look at Caitlyn. Caitlyn just has this rolled into her base stats. Diana just simply has it shown on the passive. I'm ambivalent about it. I don't really care either way, although I like concise tooltips. I like condensing things down. So this could have simply gone into her base stats, but also whatever, right? It makes Diana's players feel good because it used to be on the passive and it was such a big number that it was like really felt. Whatever. The big thing, or the small thing kind of, is casting ability still grants a bunch of bonus attack speed, but it's simply, instead of being 30 to 90 based on E rank, it's based on champion level, which is up here. So let's do this math. Okay, so here is her base attack speed without doing anything before and after. 10% higher at level 1, and it scales up 29% higher at level 18. That's pretty good. This is a very good base attack speed, by the way. 1.114 is very, very good. So she has really good attack speed, as you kind of expect for Diana. She's kind of supposed to. Okay, cool. What about when you activate it? Well, technically, because you can rank up E around here, and then, you know, it goes. There was a small dip when old Diana ranked E, but it very quickly becomes better overall. Now, most of the difference is squashed when you have very high attack speed counts. The difference is not quite so big, but overall still a 0.2 attacks per second difference. Still overall more attack speed. So Diana, right, has more mana, has more attack damage, and has more attack speed. In general, has more. Okay, so buff, 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 buff. Okay, what about damage? Well, the damage is identical. With the difference being the AP ratio on damage is halved, and the mana restore is gone. The mana restore is gone because the base mana is higher. This is generally fine. This is completely reasonable, so it's totally fine. It's fine. The cleave has half the AP ratio. So 0.4 AP has left the kit so far. Stay tuned. Okay, 5 mana off Q, cool, whatever. Here's the W cooldown, getting a rank up incentive, but being worse at early ranks. In general, a lot of these changes seem to be jungle nerfs. They seem to be jungle Diana nerfs. Right, very big W cooldown nerf. Flat shielding down is generally jungle based. 25% lower damage ratio on the W as well. The shield down 25 to 10%. The cooldown, better super late game. And by the way, mid laners gain more XP than junglers, so a mid laner feels this nerf a little bit less overall. Want to point out the base damage of the shield didn't go anywhere, so if you're using it for wave clear or just to simply kill jungle camps, you're fine. Also worth noting that if you're only doing 1 W per camp anyway, and you're healthy enough to survive the jungle anyway, then you're not going to feel this very much. But also I want to point out there is a 0.2 bonus health ratio on this. Again, you're trying to make up for a total shield difference of 20. So if you have 100 bonus health, you make up the shield difference. 100 bonus health, not hard with Roa or Leandries or whatever. Not hard to make back. Kind of point that out. Again, the AP ratio is lower on the damage, but there you go. All right. Overall weaker ability, though, I will say. What's next? The E and R swap places, okay? So her old Dash to Moonlight reset is now on E, and her old Point Blank Slow is on R with some damage. Let's compare the new R to the old E. All right, the old cooldown lines up really closely with the new cooldown. And kudos to the designer for finding numbers that worked really well here. Obviously, the first 5 levels, you have an extra ability. That's pretty sweet. You don't have crowd control, so your gank assist is worse, but you can dash into melee range, deal some damage, cool stuff. All right. Also, of course, there's some damage that didn't exist before, but the actual ability itself does a lot less damage, to the tune of 60 to 100 less damage. That's not a ton, but you would hit twice during almost any combo, right? Land Q, dash, dash. So it's 120 to 200 damage off the combo is roughly what you're missing in most cases. And remember the 0.4 AP ratio on the passive. So there are some pretty substantial damage down so far. The caveat being, again, you have more attack speed, so the follow-up damage can still be there. In general, I would say this is still a damage nerf so far. Cooldown about the same. Usability up a little bit. I didn't do the mana cost changes, but that's pretty similar here as well. Damage ratio also down by about 1/3, which is not as bad of a nerf as the damage nerf. So, okay, I missed some of these. To be fair, I didn't do all this, but yeah, it's damage down so far. But we have a real ultimate. It's a pretty short cooldown for an ultimate, but it means that Diana actually has a real cooldown now in the game, so that's kind of different. Instead of always being able to QRE, you can QE, but you can't always R. So the pattern changes, right? She is now more ult reliant because she has a real ultimate. Cost up, whatever. Slow up, sure, of course. In general, overall, a stronger ability. The big thing is that if you pull a champion, you get 200 to 400 bonus damage and a 0.6 AP ratio on top. Increased by even more if you get more champions. So this is where your damage comes back, right? I will still point out her pre-6 laning phase has more damage overall because the new E exists, just losing the CC. There's overall less CC on the kit, of course, because this has a long cooldown here. Longer than the old E, but a reasonably short cooldown for an ultimate. This is pretty quick. And again, just kind of pointing out that this has your damage. This brings the damage back. So overall, Diana's damage feels higher. Her overall CC feels lower. Her overall mobility and tankiness feels higher. Okay, tankiness overall higher is maybe not quite correct, but looks like cool changes. It's always hard to nail these things down. I have been wildly inaccurate in looking at these remasters and judging whether they're better or worse. I'm really bad at actually figuring this all out. This feels like a buff to me still. This feels power positive. It's probably power negative in the jungle from this. Also keep in mind, again, we pointed out that the early attack speed is slightly down. I mean, it's almost not enough to matter, but technically it exists. So there are some spots here that nerf jungle Diana, but this still feels pretty positive. Okay. Next up, Garen nerfs. Garen has definitely been OP, definitely been too strong, and so lower attack speed ratio on the E, and slightly lower spin damage overall. Here's the math. Garen E flat damage based on level up is simply down up to 2%. Not a huge deal, but it exists. There you go. Flat damage down 1.6. Yeah. Big things happening there. As far as the attack speed ratio, it's down by 20%. I plugged the numbers into his base stats. If for some reason you didn't pick up runes or didn't pick up any items, here's what the data table would look like. To give you an example of what this would do. Now, again, this pushes more and more towards the 80% mark the more items you buy. But if you didn't buy any items, this is your data table. Or if you only bought raw attack damage, you went like lethality and stuff, this would be your data table. So there you go. That's the math there. This overall seems kind of small, personally. This doesn't seem that gigantic. It matters some, right? It exists. It's going to lower his damage somewhat, but it doesn't seem absurd. So I think he's still on the strong side, and if you want some elo, go play Garen. Nice simple buff to Karma Shield. I didn't math this one, but it's 10 to 30 more shield. That's nice. Nerf to Kassadin. Kassadin has been definitely taking over games. New Presence of Mind is awesome on him. Overall, very strong champion. Want to point out that most commonly, people max Q first. Highest win rate build is maxing Q last. Otherwise, E over W. Of note with this is we might see more people go for the Q max first build because there's a cooldown scaling now. You might not see it, but you will feel this if you don't. Keep in mind, Kassadin gets CDR pretty late in the build. You often finish Roa before Seraphs, sometimes not, but occasionally. Yeah, I mean, you're going to feel this somewhat. Here's the cooldown table. Certainly can matter. Here's the mana restore. Doesn't matter until very late in the game. Again, if you're maxing Q first, you always max E over W. In either case, whether you max Q or not. So, I mean, maybe you start feeling this at level 8 and so, but again, not going to be felt in the early laning phase. Champion mana restore, I believe, is quintupled in both cases, so it's the same nerf. Still, I mean, pretty solid mana restore, right? 60% missing mana is pretty good. 30% missing mana, I think I misspoke. Anyway, next up, yeah, I mean, Kassadin's still going to be on the strong side. I think he's very, very good, and he will remain quite good. He will be above 50%. Next up, Aramis getting some health growth and getting a better rank up incentive on the E. I think it already gave taunt duration and attack speed, but now it also has cooldown scaling. I still don't think you skip the Q max first on Ramus, but maybe you stop at 3 or 4 points to get E sooner. Probably not, but it's a possibility. Here's Ramus, though. His new health values are pretty nice, up to 8% more. That's, of course, before things like Cinderhulk, which you're, of course, buying. And then also the cooldown scaling. You'll feel pretty quickly on. This helps the jungle clear a little bit. Certainly, again, by level 8, you're pretty close to finishing Cinderhulk by then, but, E is your attack speed buff, so there's some value here. Next up, Rise, losing 15 flat damage on the Q. Yep, deserves the nerf. Cool to see. This is going to definitely have some wave clear breakpoints at some point. It's going to matter. Going to lose some value. Rise is still I would say that Rise has gotten closer and closer to being solo queue and pro viable. That gap is certainly closing, which is good. Still generally weak in solo queue and generally strong in pro. Nerfing Conqueror is going to hurt him, of course, as well. So he's going to be sub 50 by quite a bit, I'm pretty sure. Next up is Senna. Senna going to be doing some nerfs. She's definitely overtuned. Absolutely the case. Glad to see this coming through. Still very fun to play. Still a cool champion, but definitely OP. So health growth down. She's going to be very squishy now. She's going to be well below 2k. Less Wraiths drops as support. Bard doesn't kill your stuff anymore. So less Wraith drops as support. 10 less damage on Q. 0.2 to 0 lower root duration on the W, and a slightly higher AP ratio on the R in case you wanted to go AP on Senna, like a Gunblade or something. So here's the health before and after, right? Was close to 2k, now nowhere close. Pretty substantial health difference. Again, things like this tend to nerf farming lanes more than support. Support often drops XP, so, support's down 5%, whereas AD carry's down 7%, that kind of stuff. Here's the Q damage. Now, a flat 10 does hurt everything pretty equally. The ratio also down by 20%, by the way. This will be pretty felt. Level 9 is not that hard to reach, so, we'll eventually, not be super screwed on support Senna, but also, again, the AD ratio nerf is higher than the flat nerf, so disproportionately nerfs, farming lanes. Root duration, this actually only goes away when you level up, so this is going to nerf support quite a bit. It's going to nerf your landing quite a lot, but, 1.25 is still a pretty good root, so still a strong ability. Yeah, big nerfs here. Big nerfs to Senna, but deservedly so. Should be sitting above 50% still. Looks pretty solid. 2 AD on Sivir. I did the math. Woo. Good stuff. Remaster on Yuumi. All right, huge changes here. Okay, so actually gets the mana back. 50 to 160. I didn't math this, but you get 50 to 160 mana back if you auto attack. Base shield up as well. They are trying to push Yuumi back to dismounting and doing her stuff. I think that's good. For the health of the champion, the more she has to dismount, the better off you are. So, okay, fair enough. But because of that, they've done a lot of mana nerfs, right? So saying, okay, we're adding the passive mana back in, but your mana costs are higher, so this might end up being power neutral-ish. Let's talk about it. Q costs 10 more mana, has a much lower AP ratio, but deals more damage. 0.65 becomes 0.4. Damage is up by 50, though. The missile's not out for as long. So that's the big thing, right? Is the, sit on top of a Garen, chase someone down, weave the Q around, hit somebody. You get 1 less second for that. That's a pretty big deal. But overall, let's talk about it. Woo! Look how far this went. All right, we're going to scale over a little bit. So old cost, new cost, 10% higher. Damage rank up 22% higher. And with the ratio going down, it takes 40 to 200 AP to nerf this. Yuumi doesn't typically have that much AP. So, generally speaking, Q is stronger. Yeah, it costs more mana, but you get the mana refund on the passive. She's more threatening. Now, this might be the real hidden nerf that matters a lot. This can absolutely matter here, right? This could be the single most important change of the entire patch, at least for Yuumi. This can mean a lot. It can also not, because this ability is pretty much objectively stronger. All right. W. Nerfed, question mark? Channel time when attaching, so it means you can stun her or root her or silence her, and it stops the channel. You have a better chance at catching Yuumi out when she's dismounted. That can be exciting. It means that she also can't react to Nautilus Hook by getting away, because it's going to take the full quarter-second cast animation, which means, by the way, unlike, let's say, Ezreal, where if you hooked at Ezreal and Ezreal pressed E, you would hit him, but he'd blink. This is a channel. Assuming that it actually means channel, if the hook lands, she stops casting. And you catch her and she dies. Very big change. Also, no longer follows summoner TP. That is a really big deal, especially for pro. I know it can feel bad. It means that suddenly you want to really think about buying boots. You're probably still not gonna, but you're gonna really think about it. This is gonna feel bad for Yuumi players. I see the logic behind doing it. I could have seen us not do it. It's okay. It's fine. Getting back to base for free, getting a free teleport is certainly pretty meaningful, right? It was a pretty obvious source of power. It's not the end of the world. Yuumi can get back to lane using her E for some move speed and stuff. It's going to be okay, but going to be some stuff. Also of note, if you can CC Yuumi, can't cast again for 5 seconds. That's a pretty big deal as well. So catching Yuumi out in the wild, doable. We're going to see more deaths on Yuumi by a lot. This is going to mean quite a bit here. So a lot more catchable, but they bribe you with more stats. So instead of granting 5 to 13 plus 4 to 16% of force, 5 to 13 becomes 12 to 20, and 4 to 16 becomes 12 to 20%. Also, the numbers are all based on her attached ally's adaptive force, which is generally going to be a buff to Yuumi. Now, if you're playing Yuumi with Nautilus bot lane, it's weaker, but when Vayne buys a BF sword or whatever, up it goes. Also, in general, I want to point out that these numbers lined up pretty close with these numbers, and these numbers line up exactly with these numbers. So it's actually exactly 1-to-1 as opposed to kind of 1-to-1. Doesn't really change anything overall. the like amount it matters is the same. But let's talk about when it comes in, and it comes in early game, right? You max this ability last, 12 plus 12% from the very beginning. That's cool stuff. That's a pretty meaningful amount. So when you have plus 50 AD on your AD carry, that translates to about 80-ish ability power. And you get 12 plus 12% of 80, which is actually like a good solid plus 20 AP, right? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's a lot more ability power that Yuumi's going to get. Also keep in mind that means that, again, she's going to give more ability power and attack damage to her anchored target. So that Jinx that bought the BF sword, instead of getting 5 plus 4% of Yuumi's ability power, they're getting 12 plus 12% of their own attack damage. That is substantial. That is a substantial difference. The carry that Yuumi is on is going to be doing a lot more damage. The number difference here is meaningful. This absolutely matters. So watch out for this. Next up, Yuumi's now grants attack speed. That's a big deal. Even more power to the carry. She's going to really buff up a Jinx. There's going to be a lot more damage on that Jinx. Oh my word. You max the second. This is going to come in pretty reasonably. No longer stacks charges. No longer has a missing health heal. The heal itself is different. The cooldown is different. The cost is different. The move speed no longer decays and lasts for longer, which means it's overall a buff. Let's go into this. So the Yuumi baseline healing. The Yuumi baseline healing is really, really substantially higher. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't scale with missing health anymore, and that was where a lot of the power came from, so this is nebulous. But the baseline healing is absolutely a crap ton higher. Okay. Remember that cooldown and cost change? Yeah, the cooldown is down by about a third. You don't get to store 2 charges, but you can cast it and cast it and cast it. Difference, of course, being, look at this mana cost. Holy moly, this mana cost is a lot higher. Now, again, you get most of this back by landing your passive, but keep in mind your Qs still cost 10 more mana. Your passive mana gain is only so high. They can catch you when you're using W to get your mana back. Like, this remaster is saying, hey, your spells are good. The things you do are really, really strong, but get out there and be CC bait and die. And that's going to be the thing you have to deal with. You have to grapple with that. It's going to be a little bit tough. Meaningful mana cost change, meaningful cooldown change, meaningful health change. So I had to pick an example rank up. Now again, we can look at the ratio difference. It's always 3-to-1. The healing percent difference, it starts at 7/3, and then it scales up to 3x. I chose rank 3, level 10 as the midpoint, right? The farther on you go down the line, the more new Yuumi is better. The earlier in the game you are, the less new Yuumi is better. So keep that in mind that when we go into this next data table, early game is weaker, late game is stronger, ratio is unchanged. So this is the exact break point of when healing comes in. And it stops at 20%. Once at 20%, it's full power the whole way through. So the old 50-point healing scales up to 115, never touches the 150. Never touches it. Never comes close. Rank 1 of the ability, well, okay, it comes kind of close, but like, if you're almost dead, new Yuumi is still better. What about the AP ratio? Well, again, it remains a flat 0.3, but it could go up to 0.4. This thing used to have a massive AP ratio on it. Well, turns out that, yeah, once you got pretty low, there's a 0.1 AP ratio difference. Now you have to make up 35 more healing, so 350 AP was needed to make rank 3 of the ability better, which, by the way, not gonna happen. So ultimately the answer is, yeah, turns out this is just a stronger ability. It's an overall stronger ability. Now again, you can't heal twice. So 1 charge of the E is, in all cases, I would say better, but you don't have 2 charges of the E. Now when your teammate's at, 80% health, you just give them 100 more HP than before and then wait for the cooldown to come back, but that's going to drain you on mana. So Yuumi is suddenly going to have a very important mana constraint, which means, by the way, that the whole, Frostfang into Luden's Echo, Liandry's Torment, Morellonomicon, like poke damage Yuumi is going to have crap healing because his mana cost is so high. But as we're going to see later on in the patch, no, sorry, taking that back. Yeah, overall, this matters. This is gonna be meaningful. Now you got to go back to going Athenes and all the mana items. You want to be a really good healer, but you can maybe keep your teammate topped off. 11-second cooldown, 115 mana cost, but pretty solid health coming in. Okay. Lux VFX, hype stuff. Conqueror range nerf, half the healing. I'm glad the duration is still reasonably high. It still feels usable. That's pretty solid. Heal for less, half the damage dealt, but it's pretty much the same attack damage growth, right? I am glad that Conqueror's landing in a spot where it's usable for ranged. Like, I'm glad they did the minor rework. I'm glad they're nerfing it to be balanced. Cool stuff. Also, I love being an Omni gamer. I really like this keystone. I know it's kind of silly, but look, I'm playing Preseason. It's cool stuff. And they're adding a lot of logic to what it gives you. So Predator when you're out of combat, Dark Harvest when you're near low people, Halo Blades when you're low people and you have AD, Conqueror especially if you're melee, and when you're healthy so you can take a long fight, Fleet Footwork, early game sustain, Glacial Augment. So I don't know why you would really do this. I don't feel like... I could see Omni Stone Zyra and you go Spooky Ghost. That's probably not happening. Similar for Vel'Koz and whatnot. The unfortunate thing is so many of these runes are really auto attack based. Auto attack based, this is fine. Auto attack based, this is fine. Auto attack based, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. This auto attack based, right? Actually half of them make you auto, and that's not what Veigar wants to do in a Syndra lane. So have fun with that. Hopefully the logic works out, though, and it's going to be fine. There are a bunch of preseason updates. There was a micro patch once the runes got updated. No surprise, the Ezreal buffs, of course, with Klepto going away, although I'm glad Klepto's going away, or has been gone. Right, Omnistone got a hotfix buff. Death Dance doesn't screw you over with Infernal Soul. Sanguine Blade got nerfed to being reasonable. Ocean got nerfed to being reasonable. I have seen some data on the Drakes so far. Basically, they are all equal power level, except that Cloud's weak. This is the first time Cloud's actually weak, by the way. But the Drakes are all pretty much equal power level, which is cool to see. Elder Dragon, yeah. These are all from micro patches, right? So this was already live for all of us. This stuff as well. Takes 10 levels to make this difference up, which means it's always better. Plate's weaker, etc. Okay, so there you go. Those are the changes. Air unbalance changes coming in here as well. Username stuff, bug fixes, ton of skins. Alrighty. Scrolling up. We're 32 minutes in. TLDR, patch 9.24. Aphelios is cool. Akali has worse wave clear. Amumu is better in the early to mid game. Braum is tankier and gives himself a lot more resists. R is a better long-range snipe tool, weaker in melee range. Diana Remaster exists, giving her more mana, more attack damage growth, more attack speed, less shields overall. E has the same cooldown as old R, but a lot less damage. New Moonfall makes up for all the damage differences, but it has a very long cooldown, so good luck making up for that and playing around the cooldown. Garen, a little bit weaker. Karma, a little bit stronger. Kassadin, people were mostly maxing Q first, but it wasn't the best build. Might have to consider it now. Less mana restore, but only in the late game because you maxed W late in the game. More health, better taunts for Rammus, cool stuff. Rise 15 damage off the Q, certainly meaningful. Senna losing a lot of extra health, but mostly for farm lanes, which are getting more levels. 10 damage off the Q, 0.2 to 0 seconds off the W, and a little bit of buff AP ratio on the R. Overall, we're going to see pretty meaningful nerf to Senna here. Probably 2% or more as an AD carry. 2 action on Sivir is kind of nice. Yuumi getting a giant remaster can now once again restore mana from her passive. 10 more mana cost on the Q. The E mana cost is up absurdly much. Up absurdly much. The big difference being that the amount of AP and AD gained from you and me is massively higher. Really, really, really big deal, especially on whomever she attaches to. The BF Sword Jinx is really going to feel this. 50 more damage on the Q. Weaker AP ratio overall, though, going to be a buff to the skill. Less life on the skill shot, though, could mean a lot. I'm not sure. You can now catch Yuumi out because she's channeling, and if you stun her, she can't place it again for 5 seconds. Big deal there as well. What else do we have going on? Really big heal, no longer scales with missing health. Gives attack speed. Basically, she is really, really good at topping off her teammates and giving them a crap ton of stats. The difficulty being that mana costs are weaker. And you can crowd control her when she's off the W. Also doesn't follow TP. VFX updates to Lux. Conqueror nerfed for range. Omni Stone gets some extra logic on whom it gives it to, so it could be better on a lot more champions. Going to be looking for that. And that's it. Thanks for watching the patch rundown. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.